Then the listening maid heard him distinctly that time, and jumped out of bed, and burst open the door. The thieves ran off as if the wild huntsman were behind them. But the maid, as she could see nothing, went to fetch a light. And when she came back with one, Tom Thumb had taken himself off, without being seen by her, into the barn, and the maid, when she had looked in every hole and corner and found nothing, went back to bed at last, and thought that she must have been dreaming with her eyes and ears open. So Tom Thumb crept among the hay and found a comfortable nook to sleep in, where he intended to remain until it was day, and then to go home to his father and mother. But other things were to befall him. Indeed, there is nothing but trouble and worry in this world. The maid got up at dawn of day to feed the cows. The first place she went to was the barn, where she took up an armful of hay, and it happened to be the very heap in which Tom Thumb lay asleep, and he was so fast asleep that he was aware of nothing, and never waked until he was in the mouth of the cow, who had taken him up with the hay. "Oh dear!" cried he, "how is it that I have got into a mill?" But he soon found out where he was, and he had to be very careful not to get between the cow's teeth, and at last he had to descend into the cow's stomach. "The windows were forgotten when this little room was built," said he, "and the sunshine cannot get in. There is no light to be had." His quarters were in every way unpleasant to him, and what was the worst, new hay was constantly coming in, and the space was being filled up. At last he cried out in his extremity, as loud as he could, "No more hay for me! No more hay for me!" The maid was then milking the cow, and as she heard a voice, but could see no one, and as it was the same voice that she had heard in the night, she was so frightened that she fell off her stool and spilled the milk. Then she ran in great haste to her master, crying, "Oh, master dear, the cow spoke!" "You must be crazy," answered her master, and he went himself to the cow-house to see what was the matter. No sooner had he put his foot inside the door than Tom Thumb cried out again, "No more hay for me! No more hay for me!" Then the parson himself was frightened, supposing that a bad spirit had entered the cow, and he ordered her to be put to death. So she was killed, but the stomach where Tom Thumb was lying was thrown upon a dunghill. Tom Thumb had great trouble to work his way out of it, and he had just made a space big enough for his head to go through, when a great misfortune happened. A hungry wolf ran up and swallowed the whole stomach at one gulp. But Tom Thumb did not lose courage. Perhaps, thought he, the wolf will listen to reason. And he cried from the inside of the wolf, "My dear wolf, I can tell you where to get a splendid meal." "Where is it to be had?" asked the wolf. "In such and such a house, and you must creep into it through the drain, and there you will find cakes and bacon and broth as much as you can eat." And he described to him his father's house. The wolf needed not to be told twice. He squeezed himself through the drain in the night, and feasted in the storeroom to his heart's content. When, at last, he was satisfied, he wanted to go away again. but he had become so big that to creep the same way back was impossible. This Tom Thumb had reckoned upon, and began to make a terrible din inside the wolf, crying and calling as loud as he could. "Will you be quiet?" said the wolf. "You will wake the folks up." "Look here," cried the little man. "You are very well satisfied, and now I will do something for my own enjoyment." And began again to make all the noise he could. At last the father and mother were awakened, and they ran to the room door and peeped through the chink, and when they saw a wolf in occupation, they ran and fetched weapons, the man an axe and the wife a scythe. "Stay behind," said the man as they entered the room. "When I have given him a blow, and it does not seem to have killed him, then you must cut at him with your scythe." Then Tom Thumb heard his father's voice and cried, "Dear father, I am here in the wolf's insides." Then the father called out full of joy, "Thank heaven that we have found our dear child," and told his wife to keep the scythe out of the way, lest Tom Thumb should be hurt with it. Then he drew near and struck the wolf such a blow on the head that he fell down dead. And then he fetched a knife and a pair of scissors, slit up the wolf's body, and let out the little fellow. "Oh, what anxiety we have felt about you," said the father. "Yes, father, I have seen a good deal of the world, and I am very glad to breathe fresh air again." "And where have you been all this time?" asked the father. "Oh, I have been in a mouse hole, and a snail's shell, in a cow's stomach, and a wolf's insides. Now I think I will stay at home." "And we will not part with you for all the kingdoms of the world," cried the parents, as they kissed and hugged their dear little Tom Thumb. And they gave him something to eat and drink, and a new suit of clothes, as his old ones were soiled with travel.